Okay, so today we're doing rounding and estimating. Rounding and estimating, a lot of kids confuse them. They say they're the same thing. They're not. Rounding is one thing, and estimating is doing the rounding plus one extra step. And you'll see that here in a second. First thing you have to know, have to know is your place value. Okay, so if I have my decimal here, what is the place right in front of the decimal? What's it called? Ones, correct. If you don't know these, you're going to be in trouble today. What's the one in front of the ones? Tens. If I kept going, what would be next? Remember these? OTH, OTH the other day. Ones, tens, hundreds, and we would keep going. Behind the decimal, very, very important. What's the first place behind the decimal called? It's what? Tenths. Make sure you put the THS. I had a lot of people on our other homework put tens. Tens and tenths are two different numbers. You have to have the THS if you're behind the decimal. What's the one behind the tenths called? Hundredths. Hundredths with the THS. And this one is also, the last one is the thousands. Good. Now, THS, 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 important. Today, one of the things you might see is that they may say something about the whole number. Whole number means the same thing as ones. Okay, so if you see whole number means the ones place. Okay, as long as you got this, you're going to be fine. If you don't know your order, you're going to be in a lot of trouble today. Because today when we get into rounding, there's only a few steps to it. And it's very important for step number one is you got to figure out where your starting place is. Sometimes they tell you. Okay, sometimes they say round to the nearest tenth, round to the nearest whole number, round to the nearest hundredth. Whatever the rounding place is, they sometimes will tell you. Or sometimes they will do something like this, where they underline. If I underline that, what's my starting point for that particular one? It's the what place? Tenths. Okay, so there will be some questions on your homework today that say, what is the rounding place? What place do they want you to round to? And you would tell me the tenths. If they underline the 3, what would you say? What place is that? Ones or the nearest whole number. Thank you. All right, so the first thing you got to do is find your starting place. They will either tell you round it to the nearest tenth or it will underline. Let me give you a suggestion. When you get to this, circle it. Okay? When you circle it, that means that is the only number that could change. Okay? It could either stay the same or go up. That's it. You don't go down. You don't change anything else. We'll get into that. Number 2 step is look right. I've circled the 6. Now I want to look right. And I suggest you can do it your way or whatever, but I like putting a little arrow, which means look to the right. Look at that number. Okay? And this number is what determines happens to that 6. It will either tell you the 6 stays the same or the 6 goes to a 7. Okay? It will never drop down. It'll either stay the same or go to the 7. How do we determine whether it stays the same or goes to a 7? One little key. Charles?
If it's above like a 5 or like a 4, it changes. And if it's below.
Below what?
If it's below a 5.
Correct. If it is less than 5, it stays the same. If it is 5 or more, it goes up. Now, here's where 5th graders make a big mistake. A lot of people look at it and go, it's a 6. That's more than 5. That means it goes up. That is not the number we're looking at. We're looking at this one, right? That's the number we got to figure out if it's less than or greater than 5. So you'll hear me say this a bunch throughout the next couple weeks. Is this number to the right greater than, less than, or equal to 5? And you would all say? Less than. If this is less, what does that determine happens to the 6? Stays the same. The 6 will stay the same. Okay? It's not the 6. That's not what determines happens to the 6. It's the number behind it. It's the number to the right. Your last step. It's this rule right here. Everything behind it becomes zeros. So what was behind that 6? A 1 and an 8, right? So those become zeros. Everything in front stays the same. So everything in front of the 6, including the decimal, very important to put the decimal there, 3 stays the same, 2 stays the same. Okay? Now, if you want to be 5th grade right, I'll give you a hint. Any zeros behind the decimal, behind numbers, you don't need. So technically, 23.6 is the 5th grade right way. If you put 23.600, I would count it right. Okay? So this is very important. If you don't know these steps, you might want to write them down. But number 1, find your starting point. It might be the underlined digit, or it might be where they tell you. Hundreds, tenths, thousands, whatever. Then circle it. Number 2 says look to the right. What's the number behind it? Because that number behind it is, you got to figure out, is it greater than, less than, or equal to 5? And if it's equal to or greater than 5, it goes up. If it's less than 5, it stays the same. This number stays the same. The number that you circled stays the same. Finally, the last thing you look at is all the numbers behind it become zeros. Everything in front stays the same. Everybody got it? This is very important because watch. I'll give you an example. What if I said round to the nearest 100th? What's your first step you got to do? Circle the hundredths place, right? What number's in the hundredths place? 9. Step number 2 is what? Look to the right. What number is to the right? 3. Is 3 greater than, less than, or equal to 5? Less than 5. If it's less than 5, what does my 9 do? Stay the same. So 9 stays the same. And my last step, everything behind it is zeros. Everything in front of it stays the same. If you want to get rid of that because it's behind the decimal, I'm fine with that. Have I changed the rules? One more. Okay? Round to the nearest whole number. Step 1. Circle what? The whole number. What number is in the whole numbers place? Wake up, guys. 3. Step 2. Look to the right. Is that number greater than, less than, or equal to 5? Greater. If it's greater, what does that 3 do? It goes up to a 4. Everything behind? Zeros. Everything in front is the same. So my answer is 64. If you want it to be 5th grade right, I can get rid of all the zeros behind the decimal. Any questions? Okay.